this is the K-bar knife that U.S. Marines are issued. I'm going to sort of hold it up so you can see it really well. But I want you to pay specific attention to the top here. This is very smooth along the top. I can run my hand along it. It's dull, it's flat. There's no serrated edge on this. But if you took this United States Marine Corps issued knife and you added that Rambo fashionable serrated part of the top that makes it look really, really scary, that's where you would have the Hollywood looking knife, right? And it is not 100% that that's the knife that was used in the killings. It's not 100% that the serrated edge top was what was used in the killings. It's getting a lot of traction online in the media that it was a Rambo knife, but it may not have been. May have been something completely different. And it's very helpful to know that information in the investigation, because if the killer didn't use a run-of-the-mill kitchen knife or an extremely common hunting knife in that region, it stands to reason the police would probably have a better chance of trying to find the individual through the fingerprint of the knife. Now, that sounds weird, but I want to bring in Dave Ellis. He's an expert bladesmith. He's a dealer of world-class custom knives, and he's been called as an expert witness in multiple knife-related trials. He's also the founder of Exquisite Knives. Dave, thank you so much for being here. So one of the things I find fascinating is that the media kind of ran rampant with the Rambo-style knife because a shopkeeper led most people to believe that that's what the police were asking him if he'd sold. We're not 100% sure if that's true, but I do want to ask you this. A Rambo-styled knife with the serrated edge up here it's sort of not functional for people who hunt and fish. It's not what they would necessarily use as a functional tool, you know, in pursuit of hunting and fishing. So it's probably more likely that a Rambo-styled knife with the serrated edge is not as common as we all think up there.
Well, Ashley, I appreciate you having me. And Rambo knives have kind of taken on a generic term. Most any large, wicked-looking knife has been called a Rambo knife. A K-bar knife really is not a Rambo-type knife. The first two Rambo movie knives were made by a fellow named Jimmy Lyle, and it was based on a survivalist tool. It had a hollow handle to keep fishing gear, perhaps matches and such. And as you said, it had a saw blade top on it. A K-bar is a totally different instrument. A K-bar it was a permutation of what they called the Mark I, which was used in World War I. It was a combat knife, but it also had a set of brass knuckles built into it, so it was very unwieldy. So originally, the U.S. Marine Corps used the original K-bar. They called it the Mark I. Eventually, the Navy picked up the Mark I. But they're a totally different animal. The K-bar has a stacked leather washer. It typically has a 1095 high carbon steel blade. It also has what's known as a fuller ground into the blade to lighten it, which is that little ridge across the front and the back of the blade. So it's a clip-point fighter. Yes, please.
Can I ask you this? At first, I sort of thought, well, good luck. You know, good luck finding a killer amongst thousands and thousands of people up there who are hunting and fishing all the time with these kinds of weapons, until it was described to me that Rambo-style knives with that serrated top are not necessarily what hunters and fishermen would use. It's more like what you would pose with on Instagram. It's a fetish-style knife. It's sort of it's a macho thing. It's more for somebody who's kind of into knives, not so much the utilitarian aspect of the knives, which changes the profile of who might have used a Rambo-style knife to kill someone, doesn't it?
I would agree totally. A lot of them are fantasy-type knives. Overseas, there have been so many copies of the, quote, Rambo knife, end of quotes. But yes, from a functional standpoint, typically a fisherman or a hunter is not carrying a survival tool. They may have a hatchet, they may have a saw, they may have a knife. Whereas when you look at something like a K-bar, it really is a combat-style knife. It's not a hunting knife. Sure, you could probably chop kindling with it, but it's officially made for one thing. I mean, it has the main sharp edge, and then it has what's known as a clip, which is probably the front third of the top, and that's also sharpened. It's a very violent weapon, whether in a slashing or a stabbing motion. But with a stacked leather washer, you could grip it even if your hands are sweaty or bloody. And again, to immediately call it a Rambo knife makes people jump to conclusions.
Sure.
And the K-bar would make a lot more sense to me, because to be honest with you, growing up as a kid, I used a K-bar as a throwing knife.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find News Nation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.